Mana. The mother stands between her children and the sun. The hot blaze warms them. But when she is dying and they are suspended only by the thread of spiders weaving directly beneath the orb, flesh burns, eyes turn black, hands stretch out, tongues crack and bleed, and ask the passing stranger, "Where am I?" You are standing on the earth, my child, but where? You are standing on it, but what is it? No one really knows, my dear, but you really should keep moving. The crocodiles come at midday. I lay down on the land, my flesh bubbles, twisted nails burst up from the ash of the world and fix me soundless. Comes the buzzard, comes the scorpion, comes the jackal, comes the crocodile. The pterodactyl whispers, "Move on, you are in the way, run or die." And now the one ceaseless spinning of the mana stops. No more for us the moon, her face is gone, and with it our reflection. Jungles of lunatics that eat the fallen cannot spare me. They too are running and stain the earth with bloody footprints, boy too old. And now an angry mouth has found you. Mana, mana! The world rolls over without a sigh. Mother, mother, goodbye. I will not presume to speak for anyone else, so that I will say simply that as I get older, the presence of death becomes stronger and stronger in my life. With the smell of urea in my blood, I wake up, do my daily tasks, make coffee for my mother, since we both awake at 4 a.m., and proceed, wondering how she is today, wondering how long I will have her, and the fear is an everyday fear. But since we live together now, I see it as part of my life rather than separate from it. In this way, I cannot separate what I make from the reality of my life. I must do the work I do in order to survive. I do not do it for anyone else until it is performed, and even then, I am completely alone, hoping there is some empathy for the work, that I will not be interrupted by someone who is bored or tired or jaded. The day begins, and I try to justify the time that exists left with a diary of work. Please believe me, for when I go away, I shall not come back. My God has blessed me during life, but afterwards I am as the mounds of clay that are invisible. The ancient Greeks did not believe in an afterlife. Perhaps that is why they were so prodigious. It is why the talk is so present in daily conversations. Did you see that crow? It flew over Marikaki's door this morning. It is bad, very bad. At my funeral, hold me up standing and burn me, I say. Why is cremation invisible? Why do we run from the body upon its death? Get the bag, cover it. Or let us witness it made up to resemble that of a healthy person. But do we witness the dead as they are? Some cultures put the body on a rock and leave it to be devoured by birds, and so many bury it in the ground to be eaten by the worm. And so do many of us Greeks, who must later take the bones and wash them with lemon juice and leave them in the sun until they are dry, and then put them inside their tiny tomb. But we know what death is, don't we? And the soul bird, will it take my soul? Where will it take me? I cannot count on this. I must leave my mark before I go. I return to the morning when I can think best. I must treasure it before my spirit is spread through the house and I am everywhere or lost. I see a malediction. I grab this poem, press it to my heart, and read it many times. The meter is strange. I decide if it is rhythmically decipherable to me, and then get started. I begin the piano, pick a low note or a very high one to shatter the space before me and enter the poem. Say it many times through this space you call your own. I do now presume. Say it many times until it finds you. Little soul bird, are you there? Take me to the home of the poet. Now the rhythm begins. It is a command. Where am I going? I am going to a new place of compassion. The great God who understands me and keeps me, talons in the earth and neck askew, a bird stretching towards the heavens like the voice. Now your nails are in the keyboard, between the keys, seek the tones between the semitones, stabbing the floor, and you have found the ground of the poem, the penetrable ground from which you can scream it. Now speak it softly to a child, as if it were written by an angel that came to you and blessed you. Dear sister, we were together on that day. And now, have mercy on my soul, the words cut and bleed, each syllable served upon a razor blade. Bleed, you bastard. I have your hands on the table now, and now I cut each finger with great precision to save my life. Bleed. You have tried to bury me alive, but I will cut off your fingers so I may be free from the curse of your tribe, of you who has tried to steal my every step. Now I drag your body to a dank and filthy space, sucio. I make sure you will never be discovered, and I return to my home and clean, catharizo. I must make it clean to make my way upon the slate. Hammer, 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 until the curse wears the fingers of the enemy around your neck. Toectu. You break the room, the bird flies out, and you are free. Now you can see the sun outside your window, the little sounds of joy and mourning, the tiny sounds you could not hear before. The morning is over and the day begins. Amen. It has been said that Lon Chaney was Hollywood's finest actor. As I have recently discovered many of his films with minimal makeup, I have been astonished to see an emphatic style of performance that I have seen nowhere else except from Conrad Veidt, albeit Veidt's expressionist tradition was more soloistic, or the theaters of the East. Chaney's parents were deaf mutes. They were deaf mutes. I use an expression unpopular today to show the stigma and the isolation of this population at the time. He considered finger tapping, facial, and eye expression to be his first medium of communication and speaking, his second. The second form was used in business circles or with his acquaintances outside the home, but home was where he could be himself. And in his films, one can see a use of the hands, body, facial, and eye expression and elasticity that speak to a mandate to communicate to those for whom sound is unavailable. The eyes sometimes looking at a subject from the corners, the hand gestures completely different from anything else seen on film, the muscles of the cheeks constantly working, the huge laughter, all, and then the subtle to unsubtle uses of makeup to define each character created a pantomimic performance which has still not received the note deserved. I believe this is because he intentionally chose the roles of outsiders, whom he fleshed out with virtuosity of expression for his audience, as if to say, this could be you, or this is you. Prisoners, cripples, mariners, gamblers, circus clowns or freaks, all the roles were finger taps for those without a voice in society, and he brought tears to people who had never understood the humanity of these people. But it was his own studio that marketed him within the horror genre, and for this reason we do not hear of him the way we hear of, quote, real, unquote, geniuses like Charlie Chaplin. In my field, I could not understand this better. Being labeled as a vocal freak who discusses unpopular subjects is kind of a free ticket for recording companies who say, you are lucky we distribute your records at all, which they don't. I see Chaney as an operatic performer, a performer who is required by his audience to communicate all the intricacies of human emotion with the use of minimal words, those only partially decipherable through lip reading and by the screen text. In Chaney's massively elastic face and body, one could read in a paragraph love, greed, kindness, hate, remorse, and scathing sarcasm, and a massive intelligence. In the vocal operatic world, a world in which the word is generally a springboard for musical phrases, or even 6 or 7 or 8, the mandates of changing amplitude, timbre, vibrato, Sprechstimme, Sprechgesang, coloratura, size and projection of sound serve the narrative, and only a virtuoso can do this with the hopes of being understood. In this sense, one might compare Lon Chaney's silent world with the work of soprano Maria Ewing in the Richard Strauss opera Salome. A challenge, a limitation is laid before each artist, and each must summon all the craft within his or her discipline in order to be understood. In Salome, Ewing actually changes the vocal writing to include Sprechgesang and Sprechstimme. These are not expressly forbidden by the score, but we had not heard them used before. She employs these traditions alongside high notes that are delivered like shrieks more than operatic tones, but she returns immediately to lines of verismo singing, quite identifiable in the operatic world. So she enhances the vocabulary available to the role of Salome, which is a difficult role to understand. This is a woman who is obsessed with making love to St. John the Baptist, and when he will not have her, she has him decapitated so that she may at least kiss his mouth. For most, this role is difficult to understand. The role of Salome is that of a witch, heretic, or blasphemer, but certainly a necrophiliac. Salome chastises the head of St. John the Baptist for not looking at her again and again, and the few words howl and then sing in a lyric pianissimo. When in the sudden blackness she makes love to the head of the corpse, she shocks most of her audience who see this behavior as unhuman, especially because of those pianissimos. She is at once horrific and beatific. Cheney does the opposite in his most extreme roles by choosing to show that a madman is still capable of human feeling after all the wrong he has done. Pathos in roles such as these is rigorous. It requires a superior virtuosity because it redefines what is considered to be behavior resulting from experience outside the confines of the normative human. Again, I ask, how is the daily fear of death communicated? The artist has the ability to realize this in her medium if she has a vocabulary to do so, and a sufficient fear. If the fear is anemic, probably nothing interesting will happen. She will not draw the growing, burned thing with enough discoloration to mean anything. She must have 400 streams near her jugular, or she will sound like a bad experimental sound artist. A, E, A, O, U. I can't do it. I was never able to do it. That's not an act. The vocabulary for communication grows or shrinks with an appropriate dynamic range every day, and the composer who does not know this is singing an old song in an old way. A sound poet needs a big vocabulary if very few intelligible words are used, even if her poems concentrate solely upon the mouth of a crocodile for 20 years. She can do it if she has the vocabulary to make a perfect entrance into that mouth. There is nothing lazy compositionally about limiting the subject of a poem, just as there is nothing lazy about limiting the vocabulary of sound if that vocabulary is permuted interestingly. Now, trying to do one poem about the earth per se and throwing in every sound since kindergarten is probably a stupid thing to do. Doing a poem about the earth sounds obnoxious to start with, but who am I to insist? However, the subjects of death and the vocal instrument seem the same to me. The word aman, used by a dying soldier on the battlefield in Greece and Anatolia, may come from the word mana, or mother. This is the most terrifying word in the Greek language. The Amanides are the refugee laments of the survivors or the dying of the Holocaustoma, the immolations of the Greeks, the Assyrians, the Armenians, the Azeris, and other ethnic groups by the Turks. The Amanides is part of the Miroloia, the death singing, and are part of an elaborate death ritual that must be conducted in a proper burial. If the burial is not correct, there is a great risk that the dead become the undead, the unburied, or the vricola, translated as werewolf, that must walk the soil at night looking for completion. However, an improper burial also refers to the kind of death visited upon the deceased. If he has been murdered, the oath of revenge must be part of the miroloya, and the revenge taken within a particular period of time, or he cannot rest. He becomes avricola, committing foul acts and howling for rest. Lucans Ericthro, the Thessalian witch, would call up dead soldiers to ask them all that goes below, and would only send them back to the grave if they answered her question sufficiently. Titus lenei kato kato. What are they saying below? The Mirolaistras speak directly to the dead, and in strange voices, after waiting for the priest to finish incarnating the dead into Christ yet again. They are often considered dirty heretics and outlaws by many, and are poor women from another part of the rocks who are paid for this performance. In black dress and veil, they are often seen sitting on a doorstop, drinking ouzo, smoking galwas or camels, oblivious to the flies, and have as their companions goats, chickens, and rifles. My mother asked me years ago why I sing the way I do, and told me about them, and said it must be a genetic inheritance. I was, of course, terribly proud, but I cannot smoke galwas, and until I do, I cannot call myself a proper Miroloistra singer. The art of criticism. As those of us who know anything about the world will attest, criticism is best conducted at the bar. Oh God, it's that hag again. What is she wearing this time? Her mother's toupee? It's real hair too, bitch, so show some respect. In the bar can be found the essence of true criticism, lest one be fooled by the fools of the academy. This is a savage practice akin to cannibalism, and the best critical writing is, of course, composed with the blood of the victim encased within a syringe and a 23-gauge needle. In the bar, one must spare nothing. Impalare, the nailing of the victim upon the tree, is the only way to systematically detail the innumerable failings of his corpse and what was known of his mind. It is, of course, possible to keep him alive a little longer in order to interrogate him and more thoroughly exsanguinate all doubt. And the most famous bastions of criticism do this with a smile of the crocodile and the cooing of a dove. The Aztecs and the Greeks chose only the most beautiful, the most uncanny to sacrifice, and these victims were pampered enormously before the ceremonious removal of their hearts. Nothing other than the dismemberment of the most lovely and most envied would regale the crowd. Entertainment has always been presented as sacred and or profane, and the great leader knows that generous helpings of both best tender the crowd before a law is changed. Morphine. There is no cure for loneliness but itself. The wide glare of day, endless. The night was luxurious, and with it all your dead friends who kept you warm. But then the day begins, a car, a bird, the bell rings. Wake up, sucker! The happy people are at your door. This is the hour of smiles. This is the hour, and there are another 12 that tell you you have lost and will not recover. Your God is dead. He has gone forever. The light is piercing, even though through the burnt holes of your black curtains will emerge some sign of life. Someone is passing, that someone that knows your name, that someone that you hate, that knows you are awake, who will not leave you, because waking up is all you do for most of the day. Black tape is gone. Where is it? Look again. Block the light. It burns your retina. It burns your brain. It burns your skin. The shout of dawn. Find it. There it is. Black taped and whole again. The noise is louder and there are people laughing. They are saying good morning. They are giddy minnows floating atop a sea of dumbness. The bell rings and you smile. The smile of the man who holds the key. Keep ringing, buddy. They want to take you out of here. They know what's good for you is anything but you. And you are rich. You are richer still with knowing that your living death is a death with dreams that no confidence man can pry away. They may be all you have, these thoughts, these memories, these dreams, these hallucinations of the things you could have done, what you might have become, all just impossible, but only just out of grasp. The thought is the deed is out of grasp. Out of the finger, sweaty but fully fleshed, still come to you like a gift unwrapped. And wise men know that the thing itself is always. And wise men know that the thing is always better than the thing itself. The bell has stopped its ringing and there is another roll of tape. The minutes passed. You have locked the windows, there was a noise, and now you are airless, living like a bat with a human face. It whispers, once I was a fool like you, but having been scarred forever by the smiles of stupid people, smile myself now forever downwards, like the smile of death, the great reliever, for what is lonely is really just lonely for a man, not for a God. I would like to imagine a reading by Michaud hammering Jeham into the soul, into the skull of his enemy, from Cesar Vallejo or Gottfried Benn, from whom I have only heard lectures, and more from Paul Celan, his later suicidal work. His understanding that only as a shade could he meet his mother in the underworld meant a heightened distancing from the world in order to commit the act. Celan's realization took years to emerge. He lived in a state of physical, linguistic, and psychological dislocation. And I have heard from eminent poets that his later writing is unintelligible. I could not disagree more. The dead sound of his voice reading Todesfuge should point towards the progressively traumatic poems that succeeded. Again, the voice. The observations during World War I of the medic and doctor Alfred Wolfson, who had heard the screams of soldiers with torn limbs in the state of amputation, or others with burned flesh, need enter the world of theater the world of Grotowski, of course Artaud, and of the expressionist Kokoschka, the Schrei, Geist, and Ich theaters, all considered words as a result of electrical human power. The vocabulary of the great Cathy Berberian, whose arsenal of sound has been pilfered by new music composers, including her husband, to the extent that it has become a rarefied new music form and lost its essential power, this happened only because she died blind, impoverished, and young, or she would have continued her research. The work of Pierre-Henri, of Giaren, of other electronic composers has redefined the possibility of the theater of the voice. The vocalist as composer must continually find more ways of expressing herself, for needless repetition from project to project implies the same message as the one given before. New jungles of sound await and can be heard, and must be realized whether on tape cassettes, initially in bathrooms, or in state-of-the-art studios. The possibilities, when imagined, should be realized as soon as possible, so the conceptualization of sound by the mind has validity. I often imagine the most interesting sonic possibilities while resting far from the studio. I have also tried to hear the cadences and rhythms of Theodore Rothke, Tristan Corbière, Gérard de Nerval, Henri Michaud, Dora Soteriou, Miguel Hueso-Mixco, and many, many poets and writers. The rhythms of their works are like lullabies to me, because I have often needed to know that my thoughts were reasonable, or at least communally unreasonable. I will close with an interpretation of the poem Men and Women Enter the Cancer Ward by Gottfried Benn, who was a doctor of cancer and venereal disease in Berlin in the early 1900s. We have this on tape.